Hello, it's my Eurovision 2022 national selection review and reflections. So welcome to Matt Loves Eurovision. It's been a little while. If you haven't subscribed before, please do click on the subscribe button or like, share and comment below. Now, in common with quite a few of my recent videos, because my videographer has been somewhat busy, I'm doing this I'm recording this live. I'm hoping it's working this time because I tried this about 15 minutes ago and had no sound, but I can see my microphone is working this time, which is just as well, because there wouldn't really be point doing a review if you couldn't hear anything I could say. So really, this is just a little bit of a roundup of kind of what's happening in the Eurovision world over the last sort of 2 or 3 months, and my reflections of the national selection season, and also just a little bit of a chat about kind of what's coming up next. Also plans for the channel as well, what I'm going to be doing with videos in the run-up to sort of the big event in May. So we've had a much fuller national selection season this year. Obviously, last year, in 2021, we had so many acts were kind of carried over from 2020, and so we had fewer, so just not as many national selections. But this time we are back to kind of a lot more, a far greater number of national finals or kind of national shows, as well as obviously a lot of the internal selections as well. And they've really stretched all the way from starting in December all the way through just to kind of just a few days ago of when I've been recording this. So we started off with sort of Bulgaria way back in December, who announced their artist and released their song as well. We had our first kind of national selection or national final song in mid-December, which is the Czech Republic. They did an online vote and released their song. And then we had our first physical national final in the usual, which is Albania, which is the usual time just around Christmas. And that was in a physical event, in fact, their 60th anniversary, I think, of Festival Arkangas. And then we've had a multitude of various national selection shows in the meantime, and various sort of internal selection releases. Quite a lot of those clustered through the latter part of February and into the start of March. We had our last national selection show was Portugal's Festival de Canção. And the very last song to be released was Azerbaijan, which was released on the 21st of March. So which is about a week after all of the songs had to be sent to the finalised with the EBU. But it was a week before we got to see it. And indeed, it is a 40 songs rather than 41, I think for fairly obvious reasons. But we will not be seeing Russia at Eurovision this year, and possibly not for a quite considerable length of time. But I'm very pleased to say we will be seeing Ukraine in one form or another. So in terms of just some of my reflections of national final seasons, it is impossible to watch them all. Well, maybe it's not impossible, but you certainly have more time than I do if you can watch every single one, which would be quite difficult since a lot of them run at the same time. So I kind of sort of had to pick and choose the sort of ones that I watched, and so sort of particularly I followed Festival de Canção. It's one of my favourite national finals. It's very different from all the other national selections. It's more like I think it was described as if hipster Eurovision, but it's a very chilled out, relaxed, and very Portuguese sort of final. They don't really make any great compensation for the fact that it's a Eurovision entry, or it's going to be a Eurovision entry. It's just they do what they do, and I find it a very sort of lovely palate cleanser of a national final. But I sort of dropped in on France and Croatia and inevitably Sweden as well. I watched Lithuania. I thought had a good selection this year as well in terms of just the range of songs and the quality of the national finals. And there were admittedly some national finals I overlooked. Simply just because I didn't have time, or if I'd had a look at some of the songs in advance and decided that I didn't have any strong feelings, and so I thought I would just let them go. And because I'm doing this live, I can respond to comments in the event that I have any. And someone did say that there's been a shift away from internal selections this year. Yes, I think the I wouldn't say the end of the pandemic, but the fact that we were able to have more events, kind of more physical events again, and also just because we weren't having a whole load of artists coming from 2020, I think has just increased the number of national finals, and particularly the big five: France, Germany, Spain, Italy, and the UK. 4 of the big 5 had national selections this year, which is more than normal. So yes, but it means there's been lots to watch as well, which is good. And one thing something I just always sort of reflect on is there is always sort of a certain amount of outrage amongst the Eurofan community about whether a song that people wanted to win didn't win, or they'd been done dirty by the juries, done dirty by the televote, or there'd been some other kind of voting scandal, etc. And it just made me think about kind of how countries do go about selecting it, and are there any sort of things that I prefer? I mean, to be perfectly honest, though, I always think that countries can select their Eurovision song in any way that they want to, in any way that they choose. And so I always find sort of arguing about what could have been as a sort of a slightly moot point. But I do think where they have finals where you have a mixture of, well, some of them will have a mixture of jury and public vote. Some of them just have public vote. Some of them have, I think Albania is the only one, could be another one. Only, I think, San Marino, I think as well, only have jury vote. San Marino, fairly obviously, for various reasons. But I think where things come slightly unstuck, or why people get very angry, is where juries are, particularly where there are very few members of the jury, and so it can be very easy for a juror to skew results away from one or two particular songs. As I say, that is perfectly the broadcaster's right to do it that way, but I can see why it tends to cause a little bit of outrage at the time, because you sometimes end up with results that the public vote might not have gone for as quite as strongly, or etc. But I think personally, I think the ones that work best are where you have both jury and public vote. I do think those tend to be the ones that work best. But where the jury is of significant breadth, that you don't get a skew towards one, or away from particular songs, or very obviously that happening. And I think France being a good example, they had I don't think we need to listen to every single jury member after every song, but that's another personal view. But I think they had about sort of 8-9 jurors, and I think it kind of cancels out kind of any bias towards or bias against certain songs. So, however, there's no sort of perfect way to do it. And to be perfectly honest, the only people that really get aerated about this are kind of perhaps in-country fans and kind of the general, really deep knowledge Euro fans like myself. Although I try not to get too upset about national finals, because they are what they are. When it comes to the actual contests, no, people watching don't know any of this and don't give a damn. So by the time you get to the contest, all of that is in the past. So in terms of what happens next, these next few weeks tend to be a focus on a lot of the kind of Eurovision events, the kind of the pre-parties they're called, and they are going ahead this year, which is really pleasing. So we've got ones taking place in Spain, and also in the Netherlands and Israel, and in London as well. And I'm very pleased. I will be actually at the London Eurovision party again, although in a different venue this year. But still, hopefully, see lots of different artists, and that's really quite exciting. I will inevitably do a little bit of a review, possibly a written blog rather than a video. We'll have to wait and see what I decide to do for that. I will be doing a blog on some of what I call the best of the rest songs from the national finals, just some of the ones that I particularly liked that didn't make it. I do that every year as well, so I will try and get around to that as well. One of the reasons I haven't done many videos is partly because the video editor has been somewhat busy, and also we've had quite a busy time with moving 300 miles to the north from where I used to live, and changes in jobs and that side of things. But I will be doing my top 40 countdown, so preview countdowns as I've all done over the past few years, which is just my personal ranking of all of the songs. I don't do it from a perspective of this is the most likely song to win, or this is the best song, or whatever. It's just my personal top 40. It's just one way of organizing them into a preview. I could do them alphabetically, but I choose to do them in a rough order. It makes it a bit more interesting and controversial. I will be doing those again. I'm somewhat scarily, I'm going to be sort of slightly having to do the videos myself this year, although my videographer, i.e. my husband, is going to set me off in terms of doing a kind of a template for it. But it probably won't be quite as polished as perhaps we've previously seen in the last couple of years when I've done them. But it might also avoid some copyright issues as well, because we might just kind of not actually play any of the sound of the songs, because that can always cause a bit of a cropper. But they will be starting on the 31st of March, which is next week, in fact. So I better get my skates on for trying to sort that one out. Other than that, I think there's some other things that will be happening in Eurovision world is the artists are doing various promotions. Obviously, they go to the pre-parties, but they also are touring about kind of different countries as well, promoting their songs. Very pleased to see from our perspective, from the UK perspective, that the UK artist is gallivanting around Europe at the moment doing live promotion, which I think is done in Bulgaria and is off to Switzerland now. So, which is really nice to see, because we haven't done that much apart from the kind of the pre-parties in the last few years. So that is good to see. And really, I'm over 10 minutes now, so that's lots of talking. So that's a quick canter through. I'll have a blog post about the best of the rest coming up. And I say we'll be starting my videos for my top 40 countdown. I know having already kind of, well, I haven't quite decided my top 40 yet. It's still moving around slightly. I know some of my placings will be perhaps controversial. But there's actually, I would like to say that I will say right this now, there are not that many songs that I really dislike, or there's a couple that are, as I called, Spotify skippers, and that kind of help. That's one of my kind of criteria that I kind of do to know how I feel about something. But to be honest, there's very few this year, so it's sort of, I'll say even my low placings will not be necessarily a negative. It's just, as I say, it's just that there's plenty of others that I like. But anyway, all that will all be to come in the very near future. But otherwise, thank you for joining me, and I will speak to you again very soon.